Simon Told Helen wins a half length. Zach Benelli second.
Welcome to Greyhound Gossip.
Peaky Blinders start cheering for Tommy Shelby wins the WA Sprint Championship final.
Featuring Peter O'Neill.
Mozza moves up to Mermaid Manelli. Fab's Gem 3 deep. Here comes Fab's Gem.
Hard Style Rico by 5 lengths to Simon Told Helen. Third Tommy Shelby.
This segment is dedicated to the discussion and promotion of greyhound racing.
Cindy's Oliver, Rockstar Patriot, Paul Stewart, back-to-back with Rockstar Patriot in the Galaxy.
Handsome Prince, a boulder clear. The former Tasmanian Handsome Prince has won the $1 million chase.
Very good morning, everyone, and welcome along to Greyhound Gossip. Big weekend of greyhound racing, and Friday and Saturday night down at Mandurah. Saturday night we saw the heats of the West Chase, and Emerald Guard was too good for Morgan Turner over Curo in the opening heat, was well supported as well. Miss Envy gave Crystal Shinners a good night out, defeating Arbolino in the second of the heats, and then Sunset Comanche defeated the kennelmate Shy Emoji in heat number 3, where Bezecchi for Paul Stewart defeated Wise Barra in that final heat. Now, the box draw has taken place on Saturday night. Curo's come up with box 1 and with Tab Touch currently at $6. Arbolino, $10. Bezecchi, $3.70 in box 3. Wise Barra, $7. Shy Emoji, $15. Emerald Guard, $4.20. Miss Envy, $5. Sunset Comanche, $8. Outstanding final. That's coming up on Saturday night down there at Tab Touch Park, Mandurah. Greyhound Gossip, and we've got a very special guest in the studio this morning, David Simonetti, who's been involved in greyhound racing. Well, he'll tell me when he first started, but I would say from the early days, and we started racing, of course, 1974. This year we're celebrating 50 years of greyhound racing, and he joins us in the studios of Tab Radio, Racing and Sport. Simo, good morning.
Good morning, Pete. How are you?
Great. I'm doing really well, and you're looking well. When was the first day that you went to the Greyhounds?
Well, I listened to the first night of greyhound racing on the 12th of December. It was a Thursday night, 1974. I remember sitting out the back with Mum and Dad, and we'd had 50 cents each way on every number 8.
Okay.
And we were fortunate that the first winner was David Volo from box 8, and I think the second winner was La Lista, I think, from box 8. So I sort of started with a bang, and we continued that tradition for many, many years, and all the money used to go into a cigar box, little wooden cigar box, which we looked for the other day. We couldn't find it. Probably taken it to an antique dealership and seen to see what it was worth. But I actually went on the second ever night of greyhound racing, so the following Thursday, and just was overwhelmed with the electric atmosphere, the number of people that were there. And, you know, they said they had 15,000 on their first night. That wasn't an extravagance at all. That was jam-packed, and it was back in the days where kids and families were all as one, and it was just a terrific atmosphere. And I said to my mum, this is what I wanted to do, and made a decision as a 12-year-old.
Ernest Clark was the first president. There was a lot of history that went in, and a lot of organisation to get greyhound racing up in Western Australia.
Yeah, and it took them a long time to finally get to opening the turnstiles at Cannington, because we were the last Australian state to conduct greyhound racing. Adelaide beat us by a year or so, and we were actually, all those people, the pioneers, and there was a lot of owner-trainers that were sort of behind that movement. They thought greyhound racing would start about 1970, 71. Well, the actual act enabling greyhound racing didn't start until 72, but it still took them a further 2 years to actually have that lure go around for the first time. So there was a lot of dogs that came across as pups from the eastern states that actually never raced because they were too old because of those delays. There was a lot of frustration, but when that first race was actually conducted, everything sort of was forgotten, and greyhound racing was underway.
You bought in a race book. The first ever night, 12th of December 1974. It's been well kept as well. So two questions. David Volo, Sammy Blackburn was the trainer.
Yeah.
How was the preparation? How did the trainers prepare the greyhounds for that first meeting? And I noticed there's an A. Meek. Is that Tommy Meek?
No, that was his brother.
Okay. Had a runner in the first race.
Yeah, and it may have actually been Tom's, but Tom actually went bankrupt waiting for greyhound racing to get going.
Okay.
He'd invested a lot of money in a property and also had invested a lot of money importing dogs from the eastern states, but unfortunately there was no way to recoup any income. and actually think he actually went bankrupt, and that may be why it's in his brother's name.
Okay, and then there's Claude Powell and David Hamer on the first night as well. But
yes,
Sammy Blackburn, how did they prepare the Greyhounds?
Well, Sammy Blackburn was the starter at Richmond Raceway, and I thought he was a really old chap. And I remember doing a radio show back when it was racing radio many, many years ago, and Craig asked me about Sammy Blackburn. And I said, oh, look, you know, he was an old gentleman that won the first race. His antics were absolutely crazy after winning it, and he'd be well and truly past now. Anyway, the producer got a phone call. It's Sammy here. And he had this really thick English accent, and I ended up catching up with him a week or so after it, and he gave me his trophies, and he gave me a long detailed history about how he became involved in greyhound racing and what it was like winning on the first night. And I get from what he was telling me, it was simply the dog in the backyard without really a lot of clue about how to train the dog, other than you need to walk these dogs. This is the way they're going to get fit. And I'm sure that he would have been one of the many that, went along that path of walking the dog for fitness. It was an exciting time for everybody. And, David Volo, he encapsulated with Sammy what he did on that opening night. It was theatre. It was absolute theatre.
Do you remember Bright Idea, the first ever winner of the WA Greyhound of the Year?
I do. Bright Idea won the 1975 Goatee Award, and for that collected a $4,000 Datsun 120Y.
Okay.
Which was an amazing prize. Now, Bright Idea was a very interesting dog. They say that he came across from Victoria on a lease basis, but the actual true story is that Des Duncuff, the trainer, was from Victoria. He was a trotting trainer. In fact, he'd had a run in the Inter-Dominions about 10 years ago. He had no interest in greyhound racing, but he'd come across in February 1974 for a holiday. The place that he was staying, the person next to him, the next door neighbour, if you like, had a litter of pups. And Des politely agreed to come and have a look at the pups. He said, oh, they're lovely, they're lovely. Next minute, he's walked out with a gifted pup. And that began the journey for Des Duncuff in greyhound racing. He went back to Victoria, and that little pup was probably a 12-month-old pup at the time, and later on had, at its first qualifying trial in Olympic Park, had run the best time of the night. And Des got very excited about that, and he thought, well, hang on, greyhound racing's about to start. I'll load up the truck and take this dog that I've been gifted as a pup across the Nullarbor to WA. But he said, I've got my eye on this particular dog. And it was a maiden dog. And it was only a tiny little thing, 26, 27 kilo, which is about the size of a female greyhound, if you could think of it in that sense. Very, very small. And he bought it for $100. That dog ended up to be Bright Idea, and Bright Idea came across and was, I think, the first People's Champion. A fantastic record, always would win the free-to-all every Thursday night, and I would always remember it would pay 65 cents for a straight out and 55 cents for a place, and I'd always use my pocket money to bolster it up so I could get something like an extra wagon wheel at morning tea time from its winnings. But it was a dog that was rarely unplaced, had some great battles with a dog called Academy John that was trained by David Hamer, and they had opposing styles of racing where Bright Idea was a front-running type of greyhound, Academy John was the dog from behind, and the stage was always set every Thursday night. Bright Idea probably won more times than Academy John, but that was a battle of the titans, and it was the first dog that the people that used to come to the dogs, and they came in thousands, would get behind. It was the People's Champion. It was an amazing dog. I think it won its last feature final at the age of 5 years and 9 months, and it won the Winter Cup on its 5th birthday. So it had longevity as well as, as excitement. It was a beautiful little black dog, and everyone loved her. Loved him, I should say.
I want to go forward a couple of years to 1977. We had a greyhound by the name of Mr. Towhite. I'm not sure of the quality of our audio here, but let's go back to 1978.
Racing, Mr. Towhite flew out from the inside, going fast. Gold Force down the outside. Gold Force led early. From Black Speeding, Mr. Towhite. Gold Farm is well placed. Ellis Champion further back from Arthurville, pushing up in the centre. and further back out of Bonnet, down the back and Soul Force the leader. Right, 2 lengths, 3 lengths down to Mr. Toe White. Arthur Bill is out wide. They're followed further back by Ella's Champion and Gold Star. Mr. Toe White has gone up to Soul Force. Arthur Bill is out wide. Soul Force just the leader. Mr. Toe White is trying to run it down. Mr. Toe White coming at Soul Force. They hit it. Maybe Mr. Toe White. Maybe Mr. Toe White.
Yes, that was 1978. Apologies for the audio. It wasn't the best. Hopefully you caught that. But first ever WA Sprint Champion. How big was that for WA back in 1978?
Absolutely massive, because the National Sprint Championship was the number one race on the calendar. It was worth the most money, prize money-wise, of any race in Australia. And basically state pride was on the line. And more importantly, people used to judge how that state was going by the performance of that dog in that race. And for Mr. Toe White to do what he did at Angle Park that night, and part of that line may have been impacted by the fact it was so rainy and wet on that particular occasion, but it really had to dig deep. And that dog there was a mighty dog for basically two owner-trainers, Margot and Vince Davies. We've done a little story as part of the 50 years where we've spoken to the kids of Margot and Vince, because Margot and Vince have both passed, unfortunately, and that does give you an insight into what it was like to have what was probably the number one greyhound in Australia, certainly at that time. Interesting, we bring up Mr. Toe White in that Des Duncuff was asked who was the best dog that he'd ever put a lead around. And remembering Des was a pretty good trainer in his own right. In fact, Des, in his time, had 42 individual dogs. His first 42 dogs that he trained in Western Australia all won at Cannington, which was quite amazing. But he didn't say bright idea. He actually said Mr. Toe White, because he had the honour of handling Mr. Toe White at Angle Park in that national sprint final that night. So that's how much he thought about Mr. Toe White. If you think about the first 10 years, people used to always get into an argument about who's the best sprinter. So it was either Mr. Toe White or a dog by the name of Blue Echo, which came along a little bit later. So there was always that argument between the two, and if you went to the bar, you'd never win. You'd get drunk, but you'd never win who was actually that. But the best stayer, without any doubt, if you asked anybody in that first 10 years, was a dog by the name of Afro Freeway.
So before we get to Afro Freeway, Blue Echo, touch on Blue Echo. So the first 10 years, we had some outstanding chasers, Pasky Gill, and you were on the panel to discuss and come up with the top 8 sprinters of the last 50 years, which wasn't easy, as you know. But tell us about Blue Echo.
Well, Blue Echo was a dog that was racing in Victoria around sort of doing the country cup circuit, you know, where those dogs that would sort of run the 450 might get to the 500, but and it was bought by a syndicate of owners, including a gentleman by the name of Tony Forte, who just passed away a couple of years ago, who was a big owner at the time, had raced a lot of dogs with David Hamer, with John Carmody over the years. Anyway, they brought Blue Echo over to Western Australia, as Blue Echo at its previous start in Victoria had been backed for a squillion and got beaten, and they were quite upset, and the owner must have said, okay, time to quit the dog. He came to WA and it was an absolute sensation. Just a high-speed greyhound, big, blue, strong dog. I had the honour of handling him a few times, or he handled me. He was so strong, and there was something about those dogs, you know, Blue Echo, Pearl King, the number of those real top champion dogs. They were very much alpha male, strong, thought they were the king of the pack, both on the track and at home. And Blue Echo was exactly the same, but very much a high-speed greyhound, put together an amazing winning sequence. And it was only, in fact, it went over to where was it, Harold Park, and ran third in the National Sprint Championship, which brought to a run of 14 wins to an end. But then it came back, won a whole stack more until Windfire actually beat it home in the All-Star Sprint final by a half a head. But it was the dominant sprinter, and then went on to be a really good sire as well. So David Hamer, it's in the Hall of Fame, and deservedly so.
I'm going to have to get you back, as I'm going to have to get all the other gentlemen back as well that I've had on
they
talking
won't
about
be
the
as
history.
Good as me, Pete.
No, but we were only up to about 1983, and I'd like to talk to you more about, you know, the Sandy's my mum, which we'll do another time.
Yes,
Afro Freeway. Before
Afro Freeway, what a freak of a dog! Only dog at that time that had times in the fastest 20 over the 5:30, the 6:38 and the 7:40. I think it owned the fastest 4 or 5 times over the 7:40. and also the top 5 times over the 6:38. It was a freak, and it could run over 7:40. Its sectional times were faster than the track record over the 300. So it was just a speed-on-speed greyhound. And again, it has some parallels with Mr. Toe White in that it got savaged by a domestic dog, as did Mr. Toe White.
Which, the beach?
May have been at the beach. I'm not 100% sure about that. But certainly those 2 major incidents really impacted our major 2 greyhounds at the time.
Fremantle Echo?
Lovely dog. Benny Boy had the fortune of being the breeder of him. He was from a bitch that I had called Next in Line and at a Blue Echo, and he went on to win a national sprint championship. He was a very, very good dog for Daryl and Albert Nielsen and for owner John Parker, a really good dog. As part of a very good litter, there was a dog called Black Review, who was a litter mate to Fremantle Echo, who was probably just as good, but didn't quite win the peak of races like the National Sprint Championship.
How exciting was that for you, though, to breed a greyhound that would go on to become a WA Greyhound of the Year?
Well, it was very exciting. It was really about winning that national championship at the time, and it gave me very much a head start because in media and the like, because the following year, Stewie Lowe, who was working for 6PR at the time, was obviously looking for someone to fill some airtime because they were doing a preview about the Nationals, and he'd asked me to come on and just to talk about what it was like to breed the champion of that particular race. And it was on that occasion, I think I tipped the Quinella, Sandy's new mum, and Sam Pebble, and they thought I was a genius, and they asked me to come back the following week, and that was the beginning of my radio journey, which all started really because Benny Boy had done the right thing at Hobart that year.
I'm going to get you back because I loved listening to you and listening to some of the stories of yesteryear, and we're celebrating 50 years. In 60 seconds, we're going to go to our next special guest in a moment, talking about a couple of current WA dogs that have done very well nationally. But can you tell us, please, on what are the plans for the 50 year? Can you do that in 60 seconds?
Oh, 60 seconds. Well, I feel like I've got a 500-piece jigsaw puzzle in front of me, and I feel like I'm missing quite a few pieces, and then I've got so many extra pieces I don't know what to do with. It's been a great honour to try to put this together. We have done a number of special interviews. We saw one just the other day of the first of our interviews with Rick Hart. There's a whole series that will be coming out through Greyhounds WA Media over the next few months. And then we're culminating in a very special night on the 6th of December. We'll be having that at Cannington, and that'll be a celebration of the 50 years. We've been inundated with praise with the fact that we've given race names to all the trainers of the past, and that's a massive undertaking. It's something like 3,500 names, and each being honoured with the race name this year. So we've got a few good things still to come up. There'll be an owners' night as well. So I'm not sure whether that's in 60 seconds or not, but it's been a big task, and it's been very difficult to leave some things out, but I'm trying to tell the story that it's been a family sport. It's given so many people so much enjoyment over the years. It's hard to sort of quantify.
All right, I'll get you to hang on there, and you might know this next special guest. So we're heading across to Tasmania. Brennan Ryan's about to join us, and of course Brennan's from Greyhound Clubs Australia. He's the media manager. He's doing a great job. He's taken over from Neil Brown. He hasn't missed a beat, and 2 WA Greyhounds last year, Uncle Tommy and also Sage to Neil, were recognised, and Brennan's going to tell us all the details. Good morning.
Good morning, Peter. Good morning, Simo. It's great to be with you on your program.
G'day, mate.
Fantastic news for WA. Tell us about, first of all, Uncle Tommy and how he was named the Greyhound Clubs Australia Greyhound of the Month for the month of June.
Look, Peter, the way the process goes about it, the racing subcommittee asked me to put forward some nominations of what greyhounds I see over the past month of dogs that have, been really good standouts in their racing periods at that point. And Uncle Tommy, what he'd done, for any dog to come over to any state and win a Group 1 is a tremendous achievement. And what Uncle Tommy's done in his career so far to win the Perth Cup and now come across and eliminate past his the deeds of his sire, Tommy Shelby, and win a Group 1 in Queensland for Steve Withers is a tremendous job. And the Flying Amy Classic is now a race that is going to continue to grow in stature, and his achievement certainly earned the accolade of the Greyhound of the Month award.
And we'll talk to you about the Nationals in just a moment. But last year, the National Sprint champion, Sage Tennille, rewrote the record books down at Mandurah over the 652 metres and was named the Run of the Month.
Yeah, she certainly was for Cody Charles, and it was a great achievement to do it in consecutive weeks there in the heat and final of the Group 3 Paradise Street Trophy. And what she's continuing to do is, is great things for connections. And again, on the Run of the Month award, it's myself putting forward those nominations. And there was a host of good greyhounds that had done a lot in that period, and Sage Tennille is just continuing to rise once again in her form, and perfectly at this time of the year, and hopefully she'll be WA's contingent for the Nationals, and we'll no doubt see her as amongst the nominations for the WA distance title coming up in a couple of weeks.
Doesn't happen very often, Simo, where you see a national sprint champion then become a national staying champion. It happened.
Supreme Carmen, I think, was a dog, ran second in the National Distance Championship and also second in a Sprint Championship, and I'm Busy was another one that did that as well.
I spoke with John Brash last week. There was a Queenslander that came across and won the National Sprint and then went across back to Queensland and won the National Distance Final. Yeah, and
Brennan might know this because... Was it Desley Williams trained it?
Yes, Desley trained it.
And
Dashing Corsair was the dog.
That's the one,
That's
Dashing
the one,
Corsair. Keep
so they do that, but they're freaks, aren't they? We're talking about Afro Freeway being as fast over 700 as it was over the 300.
Yeah.
But generally that doesn't happen. And look, Sage Tennille's just proved a wonderful little dog, and what a great story from a dog that didn't want to chase, was going to go into the pet program. No one wanted it as a pet. Then suddenly it's now, up there with the best in Group 1 company over both distances. And it's going to be a dog that's going to most likely represent WA this year with the heats being up at Northam and some trainers not wanting to go to Northam with their greyhounds. You would think that experience that Sage has around the Burwood Park circuit will hold her in good stead to go over again. And, she's well versed. She knows how to travel now, and that's a big thing. So going to Adelaide, where some dogs will be hopping on the plane for the first time, Sage will be sitting up the front of the plane, ordering off the business class menu. It's done it that many times.
Yeah. Now, Brennan, are you all organised for the Nationals in Adelaide?
Yeah, certainly am. Looking forward to being a part of the festivities over there at the end of the month in August. And look, the Greyhound Clubs Australia have backed South Australia of what they've looking forward to pulling off and bringing up 4 really good days of highlighting the Nationals Carnival, and we've got no doubt the symposium, the awards, and the showcase of the big race day with the Straight Track Championship at Murray Bridge on the Saturday morning, and then we're to Angle Park on Saturday night for the sprint and the distance title. So it's a really good period, and to showcase what South Australia can do. In putting on such an event, and the culmination of bringing all the good dogs from around the country for this is going to be a great thrill, and to see it happen there in South Australia once again, I believe it's for the 5th or 6th time they've hosted our Nationals Carnival. It's going to be an exciting period, that's for sure.
It certainly is. Thanks for joining us, mate. We'll catch up with you over in Adelaide.
Look forward to it. Thanks, guys.
Brennan Ryan there joining us, and I know there's been a lot of organisation going towards South Australia, so looking forward to getting across there. You'll be heading across?
Yes, I am. I've sort of had a role with GRSA in terms of just being an external sort of advisor for the Nationals, and I'm looking after the symposium, which I believe, Pete, you're going to be on one of the panels.
Interesting subject as well. Now, Brennan mentioned the straight track, and I saw it over in Melbourne, which was fantastic. Headed out to Hillsville. I know Queensland have got it, and we've been talking for a number of years about the straight track. Has there been any further progress?
Well, the land has been purchased at Pinjarra. There are some issues in terms of being an Indigenous site, some heritage type issues to be sorted through, and obviously the funding of it is very important to get done too. So it's certainly something that RAWA is committed to having a straight track. the timeline I can't tell you on, and hopefully if money enables that to happen and some other things go in our favour, that should happen. I mean, we need to have a straight track, not only for the fact that it's a very safe racing venue, that it will also give the opportunity for dogs to freshen up rather than just going around in the circle all the time, and also for some training relief, because at the moment, without so many private trial tracks in operation and the reliance on race tracks to basically handle the number of trials that the industry demands, I think it's got its just purpose.
Thanks for coming in this morning. I'll get you back in and we'll talk a little bit more about the history. And there's so much history and so many great stories, isn't there? 50 years of racing in Western Australia. It's
absolutely mind-boggling. And if we could put them all into one night and have everyone in the same room talking about their memories, it would just bring up a kaleidoscope of things. But December 6th will be a night where we'll get together as an industry, look back, share some stories, have some quizzes. You're going to be there helping the night as an MC as well. So looking forward to that. And thanks for your help in promoting 50 years of greyhound racing. It's been a wonderful journey, and I'm sure it's going to continue for at least another 50.
Let's hope so. David Simonetti joining us on Greyhound Gossip. We'll take a break and then back with Often Pacing.
Imagine what you could be buying instead. For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelpline.org.au.